Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmic Conversations. I'm Aman Wadhwa, your host. On this podcast, we bring on friends from Caylent and across the tech industry, talk about their struggles and triumphs, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they've gained along the way. Through these conversations, we hope you'll gain inspiration and practical tips to help you succeed in your own careers and personal life. I'm very, very excited for today's conversation. Joining us today is Caylent's incredible co-founder and CEO, JP La Torre. From a young age, JP's passion for technology blossomed through his interactions with his father, bonding over building computers together. Today, JP leads a rapidly growing group of incredible cloud technologists to help companies across the world transform their businesses on the AWS cloud. Without further ado, please welcome JP.
Well, hey, Aman, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
We've been so excited to have you on this podcast, JP. This is our fourth episode. We've had a few other people on here, and it's been building up to this. The last one we did was with Ignacio Hero, and we talked about Caylent's journey from his point of view, having been one of the first full-time employees. So it really cued us to come and talk to you about that journey again. But before we get into that, let's talk about you. And before we start that, let's start with our icebreaker. So we ask this to everyone that comes on board. So just tell us one boring fact about yourself.
Oh gosh, I knew you were going to ask this because I watched Ignacio's episode. One boring fact about myself: I used to play competitive World of Warcraft in college.
That's not boring. That sounds exciting.
That's the most boring fact that I've got for you today.
Do you still play World of Warcraft?
No, I haven't played in years. No, I do occasionally play other video games, but World of Warcraft is one for any listeners that used to play. You can't just really pick it up and put it back down again, in my experience. So I play other things for fun, first-person shooters, stuff like that.
Nice. You've been leading that Counter-Strike tournament at our company nowadays, eh?
Yeah. We've had a CSGO tournament running. It actually just wrapped up recently. Unfortunately, my team lost, but it was a ton of fun, and everybody enjoyed themselves, so it was great.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, well, I guess we can get started. So JP, let's tell us about yourself. Tell us where everything began. Where did JP begin?
Yeah, how far back do you want me to go?
Let's start all the way at the beginning. Tell us about your childhood. What are some key memories you have from there?
Yeah. So really idyllic early childhood. I grew up here in Orange County, California. Was born and raised in Tustin, in this little area of Tustin called Lemon Heights, and grew up in a single story sort of 70s ranch style house. Had phenomenal neighbors. My father was running an aerospace company when I was really young, and as part of that, he had all these CAD designs that he was constantly doing and things like that to automate their tooling and stuff like that. And so my first early experiences with technology really with my dad working on his 386s and 486s. And in fact, the first computer, as you mentioned, that I built was actually with my dad. I believe it was a Pentium 1. So that had a profound impact on me growing up. And then around 8 years old, my parents ended up separating, getting a divorce. That was really hard on my family. My mom and dad split meant that my mom had to, work 70, 80 hours a week. She was a loan officer. And so that also had a really profound impact on me, going from, I think, a really solid sort of upper middle class upbringing to, at times being, pretty poor. So kind of stark contrast there, from my early childhood to my middle childhood. But other than that, my parents were great, did the best job that they could. My mom in particular was a really, really loving mother. She's still alive today. My dad is not. So have a great relationship with her. And my mom's been a big supporter of mine throughout my entire life.
Oh, that's incredible. What did you do on the computers that you built with your dad when you were younger? Did you play games or?
Yeah, I was experimenting a little bit with like basic programming, nothing too crazy, playing games, things like that, playing around with first generation word processors, just experimenting. This is before the internet. And then of course, in grade school, the internet came out, and we got that at my school that I was at. And so I got really hooked on the internet, and I thought the internet was amazing. And those were the days of AOL dial-up internet. And so going those CDs, if anybody remembers those CDs that they would mail to you with like, 1,000 free hours and 2,000 free hours and stuff like that. And I ended up racking up quite a bill. I remember my parents being pretty mad at me because I was not the kid who would go out in summertime, and play and go to the beach and stuff like that. I wanted to be in front of my computer, and I was online constantly and just learning new things and stuff like that. So that was kind of my childhood summed up.
Very cool. What were your friends like? What did you do when you hung out with them?
I had an eclectic group of friends in high school. One of my good friends was a filmmaker, still is a filmmaker. So I remember shooting these like little low budget indie production, indie movies with him. They weren't even like really indie movies. They were just, we were running around with a camera, basically going to these different locations and shooting stuff. That was a lot of fun. I had another friend who was a ballet dancer. I had another friend who, drove like a 1968 red Pontiac Firebird, and, we would ditch class and stuff like that my senior year and go to the beach. So, it was just a lot of fun growing up in Orange County and have these amazing childhood experiences. So
that's very cool. What kind of movies did you make? Did you act in them, or were you behind the camera?
I was actually, he put me in front of the camera and I was acting in some of these movies. The acting was not good whatsoever. There was no script for any of them. Like I said, we were just running around with a camera basically and just shooting random stuff. And then we would go back to his house and, he'd pull up, Final Cut or whatever and start editing it and whatnot. But he's gone on and he's become a really successful filmmaker. So it's been really fun to see his career journey.
Oh, that's really cool. I had a bit of a period after university where I was doing that too. I was making short films and advertisements. It's a lot of fun being behind the camera, like coming up with something that people are going to watch and like thinking about what's going to attract attention and what message is going to go through. That's super cool.
Yeah, totally.
So tell me a little bit about your educational journey. Say like, what were you pursuing back then? What were your dreams back then? What did you want to be one day?
Yeah. I always felt like I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. Of course, when I was in high school, I didn't know what that would be. I did have a passion for technology. I also strangely had a passion for finance, and I thought maybe I should pursue a career in finance for a while. So right out of high school, my first job, I went to go work for a broker dealer. I was not a very good student. I was one of those kids who was, if I was really interested in a subject, I was getting an A+. If I was not interested in a subject, I was devoting no time or energy into it. And so as a result, I sort of knew leaving high school that college wasn't going to be for me, or at least I thought it wouldn't be for me. So I ended up just working straight out of high school. So I worked for that broker dealer for a while. I then went and interned for an investment bank. I was living in LA at the time. And then I got my first job in technology, being an IT consultant here for a regional MSP in Southern California. And it was around that time, a couple of years into that job, doing the on-site IT consulting thing, that I had second thoughts about school. And I decided that I wanted to go back to school and I wanted to pursue at least a bachelor's degree. And so I enrolled in a junior college here in Orange County, and I did 2 years there. And then I did end up transferring to UC San Diego and ended up getting my bachelor's in management science, which is part of their economics division. So that was my journey in a nutshell. I actually started Caylent sort of right after, I graduated from UC San Diego. I was running a hosting company at the time. And it was really through that experience that I became aware of sort of the container ecosystem, public cloud, all that good stuff. And so that was sort of the genesis of starting Caylent.
Awesome. How would you rate your experience at university? Do you think it was meaningful towards the work you're doing today?
I don't. And I think most people would probably freely admit the exact same thing. If I'd majored in computer science or something like that, I think maybe it could have been applicable. I do think some of the things that I learned were helpful. I have a deep appreciation for statistics, and, I ended up, my first time interacting with linear algebra and using MATLAB and stuff like that was, in college. So some of that was helpful, but day to day, I don't apply a ton of the stuff that I was doing, when I was pursuing my bachelor's degree.
Right. A lot of the world, there is this expectation from kids exiting high school that they should be going to university, that it's the right move to make so that you can land a stable career, you can pursue like your dreams. That's what's sold to us, at least in the eastern part of the world. And so wanted to ask your opinions on, like, what do you think around that? Do you think it's necessary for entrepreneurs to pursue the traditional higher education, or are there other avenues they can pursue that can make them more successful today? When we look at people from a hiring lens, is that a big consideration?
No, it's not a consideration for us at Caylent. I don't think we sweat people's personal educational background. We're much more focused on people that are sort of mid-stage or later stage in their career, obviously. So they've already got work history, they've got, experiences they can draw on, and it's much more a product of what they can do, what they can show up and bring every single day rather than what they've done academically in the past. That being said, to your earlier question, I do think school is important for some people. I think for me, it was really an opportunity just to prove to myself that I could actually be successful in it. And it was something that I had resisted for a long time, and then I had to change of heart. And so I think doing school for the right reasons is really important. And for me, by the time that I finally went back, it was for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. I do think that there's nothing stopping people in this life from being successful, no matter what their background is, no matter what walk of life they come from, whether they've got higher education or they don't have higher education. I think, Iman, in our field with software engineering and cloud architecture, a lot of times people are just self-paced learners. And so they'll go on to Cantrell and A Cloud Guru and these different resources, and, they'll get certified on AWS and they'll learn how to code. And I've seen many people be very successful with taking that approach in their career.
That's pretty awesome. You mentioned that after you exited university, you pretty much immediately jumped right into entrepreneurship. You were running a hosting company, and then you started Caylent soon after.
Yeah.
How was your environment then? Where was your cohort along the same lines? Was everyone entrepreneurially minded, or was that maybe a risky move to them, and like maybe you had to really explain your point of view to others to believe in you?
Yeah, you're talking about at UC San Diego?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of the folks that I ran across were planning on going out and joining the workforce rather than starting their own companies. Now, later into the Caylent journey, I ended up joining Entrepreneurs Roundtable Accelerator, which is an accelerator based in New York City for early stage startups. And that was the opposite, right? Everybody there had started a company and they were part of that cohort. And so it was really great to go through that experience. That was almost like continuing education for me, if you will, because I didn't really get that in school. Now, maybe if I had gone through a master's program and done an MBA or something like that, it probably would have been a different experience. But, for a bachelor's degree, I was older going to school with kids that were at least several years younger than me.
Right.
So
how would you explain the difference in the approach you had at the activator versus at university? What were people like? What were their thought processes like?
it was totally different. I mean, the accelerator was not academic. It was learning about you're running a company and founding an early stage company from all aspects: marketing, sales, channel relationships, how to pitch your business, how to do fundraising, how to build investor decks. I mean, you name it, basically we learned it. And you don't learn enough. In my program, it was only about 4.5 months, maybe 5 months. And then it culminated in a big demo day where we pitched around 1,500 people in a big stadium in New York, or a big venue, I should say, in New York. And so that was a great experience. I didn't have a lot of public speaking experience prior to that. It was really nerve-wracking. And it really forced you to think about the metrics for growing your business. One of the first things that we were asked to do after starting that program was pick one North Star KPI to focus on that's going to be a bellwether measure of whether or not your company is being successful. And it could be anything, but you didn't just get to pick and that was it. You got to pick, and then you presented that KPI to your group of peers and to the people that were leading the accelerator. And the whole experience, it was almost like they just built you up and then tore you down, and built you up and tore you down. And they were actually really, really rough on you. And we were rough on each other. I mean, the pitch competitions that we were doing, the pitch pit, we called it, every single week, people were constantly critiquing your 30-second elevator pitch. And it was really good because, that, I don't want to say rejection, but that honesty that people were giving you, you get that in harsher forms in real life. And so it's far better to experience that earlier in your entrepreneurial career rather than later.
Right. Like those lessons helped you make sure that you were on the right path as you actually worked on Caylent and actually grew Caylent. Would you say that?
Yeah, it what doesn't kill you definitely makes you stronger, and I think it definitely improved everybody. It sharpened the businesses that we were building and made them more successful.
So when you started your company, when you just got out of school, when you started your hosting company, when you had no experience with running a company before, what was that? What was that like? What did you do? Did you seek out any mentors? What was that experience like?
I did actually, yeah. There was I can't remember the name of it, but I connected with a bunch of different folks. I remember speaking with some of the founders of DigitalOcean actually at the time and talking to them for 30 minutes. And I mean, I was nobody. I was like cold emailing them and cold calling them and stuff like that. So that was a really cool experience. Throughout my entire career, I found other entrepreneurs to be incredibly generous with their time, which is why I think it's really just this kindred bond that you have, in this community. If you're building a company, you naturally want to help other people build other companies and be successful as well. So I've definitely benefited from that in a very substantial way throughout my entire journey. But back to your question about hosting. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, it was the first business that I'd ever really started. I rented some data center space inside a data center in San Diego, and I had some customers that were looking to deploy servers into physical racks and stuff that you just don't do a lot of anymore. And then I ended up doing shared hosting, which is where you're deploying multiple customers onto one set of physical infrastructure. But it was really good in that experience really made me realize far better the whole market was moving away from private hosting and towards public cloud, obviously. And if it hadn't been for that experience, I don't know that Caylent would exist today, because it really informed some of those lessons learned and some of those experiences, what we ended up doing with Caylent, first as a software company, and then later pivoting to now being an all-in AWS Premier partner. So it was really instructive from that perspective.
Very cool. Were you running this company by yourself, or did you have partners there as well?
I had one business partner, but I was running it and I was managing it day to day.
Okay. And then how soon after did you end up founding Caylent?
I would say it was less than a year after starting the hosting company. I ended up founding Caylent because I founded Caylent in August of 2015. So
okay, nice. And then Caylent remained a Kubernetes startup essentially until 2018 when the pivot happened.
That's right. Yeah, we're jumping ahead a little bit, but Caylent was an ISV. We were building a containers as a service platform, helping software developers deploy their own container artifacts into their own AWS cloud.
Right. Very cool. Tell me about your personal journey through that. So you went from running a smaller shop with the two of you, and then you started Caylent, and Caylent, as we all know, has grown incredibly. So how has that journey impacted you, and how have you evolved to play the role that you need to play today, leading 350 people?
Yeah, it's so different today. I think at some point there is an inflection point leading a business where all of a sudden you have a collection of really amazing leaders within the business, and first you start off managing people directly, and then you're a manager of managers, and then you're a leader of leaders. And I think that's been my evolution from a leadership perspective with Caylent. We have an amazing management team. We have an amazing middle management team of directors and managers, and they're really running the business day to day. And we're there sort of setting the vision and, making sure that things stay on track basically, and that we're making the right strategic decisions.
Right. And what is your day-to-day like now compared to what it used to be like then?
So different, obviously. I think early days when you start a company, you're sort of doing everything, whether you're, a sole founder or you have multiple co-founders. You're really working in the business. You're doing, accounting, you're doing sending invoices, you're doing sales, you're doing marketing, you're running the website, you're running IT, you're doing everything. That's my experience, at least, when you don't have a lot of staff and you're just getting going. And the business grows, and then you start handing off, and trusting other people with aspects of the business, and then working in the business morphs to working on the business, I would say. And that's been my experience as Caylent has evolved and grown a lot.
Very cool. I wanna ask from the perspective of setting culture. So, like when you're running a smaller shop and when you're managing everything, when you're hiring people directly, and when you're almost supervising the day to day, you have a lot of impact on the culture that's created within the company, like how people work, how they communicate externally, how things are
Yeah.
done. As the company grew and as more and more people started participating in that leadership, how have you how do you feel your impact is towards the culture of the company? Or from another lens, how have you built that culture into the company strongly enough from the initiation points that now it continues to grow in the same way? Because that's something that I experienced. That's something that a lot of people here experienced in at least the time we've been here, that despite the growth, the culture of Caylent has been fantastic. It's been one of the big reasons why I think we're growing so fast and why people want to work here. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, and I will actually steal something that I heard from our chief people officer, Christy Erickson's podcast that she did years ago. She did a segment on this. She said in that segment that the founder is the culture, or the founding team is the culture initially, and then as you hire people, even if you don't have things codified, even if you don't have mission, vision, values written down, there, and I heard Ignacio say this in the last episode as well, there's sort of a pervasive or shared belief about what the culture is and what the values of the company are. And I think that was true at Caylent. And as I recall, we were probably between 80 and 100 people summer of 2021 when we ended up actually formally setting out and doing mission, vision, values, and sort of writing that document. And it was important for me at the time, and this is just the way that I've always led and believe the company should be led, is we didn't want to chisel that in stone from a management perspective and sort of like come down off the mountain, if you will, and like hand it to people and this is sacred. We wanted ordinary Kalians to be a part of that process because everybody already knew what the culture of the company was. It was just a matter of formalizing it, if you will. And so that was an all volunteer group of Kalians that ended up meeting a couple of times as part of the committee and writing out mission, vision, values. And we made some very slight superficial tweaks to it. And those are the mission, vision, values that we have today. So I think that is a small piece of culture, but culture is something that drives behavior within a company. And so you have to be really thoughtful about the sort of culture that you're curating within any business. And it does start at the top. Absolutely.
And how do you foresee us ensuring that that culture remains consistent or builds off in a good way from where we are today as we head into the thousands of people site?
I think companies go through evolutions as they grow. Obviously, Caylent is no exception. But I think culture, once you have a group of people, it's really up to the people that are here to make sure that the culture is maintained as the company continues to grow. So that's not up to any one person. It's going to be a collective effort that we're all going to have to be standard bearers for to make sure that this culture that we love, that made Caylent special, is preserved as we continue to scale. I'm really optimistic that that culture has been maintained from the time that we were less than 10 people to now being, over 350 people. So I think we're going to do a great job doing it.
Awesome. As a leader who's been so instrumental behind, founding Caylent, and the only reason Caylent is here is because of you. But so like you've had this huge achievement bringing Caylent from where it was today. Where do you see your biggest impact lying towards Caylent in the next few years?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of really interesting opportunities right now. Everybody is talking about generative AI and how disruptive it's going to be, how it could automate large portions of the economy. And I think that is something that our customers are asking us about. It's something that AWS is investing in extremely heavily. And that's something that we're certainly building capabilities around right now as well. So I see that as being sort of the next wave of scaling our data and AI practice, how we work with customers, how we help them with their business outcomes. And if you think about If you think about people's technology stack as a pyramid, you've got sort of the cloud infrastructure layer at the bottom, and at the very top, you've got AI and ML, and then you have applications and data layers and things like that underneath. So I think we will continue to see customers focus less on IT shop mentality and more on building out intellectual property or IP.
So, like, I imagine that since when the company began and since your roles evolved so much from where it began, there was a tremendous amount of learning that you went through to ensure that like you were effective in your role in leading the company.
Yeah.
Now that since we're growing so fast, I imagine that learning and that evolution happens very rapidly, right? And so, what are things that you're investing in now personally that will help you maximize your effectiveness as Caylent continues to grow? Because I imagine your role will get even more abstracted as the company grows larger. So where have you got your sights?
Yeah, I think it's investing in the team around me, and that's building Caylent day to day. I mean, most of my focus really is on supporting other people from within the business rather than, working in the business sort of day to day, if you will. So I think just continuing to do that. I mean, we have 350 people now that we have to take care of and enable and empower and support. And so I think that just investing back in the Calyents.
And then what shape does this investment take, especially with the leadership that you're connected with on the daily? Like maybe from another way, if you could condense how you think about the kind of people that should be leading Caylent or what the skills they need to have. What are your thoughts behind that? What should good leaders have to ensure that they can run a company and grow it the right way?
I think empathy, compassion, competency, thinking out of the box and thinking like entrepreneurs and owners of the business. Those are attributes that I've really always valued in anybody that we hire at Caylent. So it doesn't just extend to the leadership team, it really extends to the entire organization. But I think those are the things that have helped make us successful from a leadership point of view.
Amazing. And then from an entrepreneurial point of view, from when Caylent started, what are some of the top qualities you would say that you had or that you'd seen in other entrepreneurs that you learned from that were core towards ensuring that it was successful or at least as successful as it could be?
Yeah, I think you have to have a little bit of delusional thinking in starting a company and suspension of disbelief, if you will. And if you don't have that, it's really hard because the odds are always stacked against you, and you have to be sort of a natural risk taker. Now, as you go through life, you have to balance risk and reward. Obviously, I think it helps if you have other people who have been successful around you or can help mentor you, that can kind of help inform what to do, what not to do, what mistakes they made, what you can learn from their mistakes rather than making them yourselves. But I think, entrepreneurship is failure and pivots and overcoming obstacles. And, it's just something that you have to go through, honestly. And, the vast majority of people that start businesses, at least their first businesses, are not successful. And so you have to have a little bit of delusional thinking that, you can do it. And, your idea and, your own efforts are going to be successful out there in a very competitive marketplace.
From your point of view, what are some of the most common breaking points that entrepreneurs tend to have that stop them on their path? And if they overcome them, they can quite easily catapult past that level and actually create some stability.
I think too many founders are too in love with their own ideas. And I think every entrepreneur, if they really are honest with themselves, would admit that at some point or another they've fallen into that trap and they fell too much. Now it's a tough balance, right? Because you have to sort of believe in yourself and have this amazing confidence in order to go out and do it and to handle all the rejection and all the ups and downs that come with starting a business. But certainly you can fall too much in love with your idea where nobody's willing to buy it, no one's willing to invest in it, and you're the only one at the end of the day that believes in it. So you have to convince other people to believe in your idea, whether it be customers or investors to give you capital. And then you also have to, hire people, and you have to convince other people to believe in what you believe in and what you're building. And so I think that that's a really important element of any entrepreneur's journey. And that's something that I see too many entrepreneurs going down that trap. And I think it's something that should be avoided. And the way that you can avoid that is you listen to your customers and you take feedback and you iterate on your ideas. And there are no sacred cows. And so you want to make sure that you're incorporating feedback into the process, and you're listening to what the market is telling you, and you're listening to what your customers are telling you.
Very interesting. Can you tell us an example of a time where you experienced this, where you had to convince a lot of people and you may have not faced the positive reaction you were hoping for, and then what you did from that point?
Yeah, so early days at Caylent, when we were still building the container management platform and following graduating from ERA, went out, talked to many, many dozens of venture capitalists and tried to raise money for the current version of Caylent. And I got rejected over and over and over again, and got tantalizingly close with a couple of really amazing venture funds that, thought term sheets coming and, it's going to be great. And you and I talked about this the other week, Aman. I mean, some of those things can become blessings in disguise, although at the time they feel like real major setbacks. And so I think that's one thing that I've learned too, is that you can have the worst day or feel like you had the worst day in your life, getting rejected or, having a major customer walk away or whatever the case might be. And some of those can be really pivotal moments that you'll look back many years from that point and say, wow, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. And so I think that's another thing that I've learned too.
And how did you cope with that moment? So give us a little more of a visceral story, like when you faced that and then you came back home, what were you thinking? What did you do to center yourself, and then how did you get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I was in a depressive state for probably a week, and I felt like I was a failure and that we were never going to be successful. And I just had to reorient myself and continue focus. I mean, ultimately, some of those setbacks ended up being really instrumental, as I said, because that was the genesis of pivoting the company, realizing that, the market that we were in, the rapidly evolving landscape, we were trying to solve the right problems, but we weren't trying to do it the right way. There was a different approach, a better approach. And ultimately changing our revenue model and our business model away from software and into services was, that key event that I think really turned the corner for Caylent and made Caylent the current version of itself today. So but it's tough, the entrepreneurship, there's the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And, it's not for the faint of heart for sure, but it's a lot of fun and it's really, really rewarding.
That's really cool. What are some moments that you would say came very close to catastrophic, but then you were able to deal with them, and then you were able to get past them? Now look back at them and laugh.
Yeah. I would say there was a point where we were probably 3 weeks away from being out of business. We had probably 3 weeks of cash left in the bank. And if we hadn't sold one particular deal, and if we hadn't had a customer commitment and being able to invoice that customer, we probably would have been out of business. So that was very, very early days. Obviously, this is not in Caylent's recent history, but it comes down to the wire sometimes like that, and you just get lucky.
So how do you deal with these highs and these lows yourself? Like, do they affect you a lot emotionally, or now have you come to a point where you expect them, so they just become a part of your life?
I would love to ask that question to other entrepreneurs, but for me, they absolutely affect me. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, at least I think I do. And definitely, I mean, celebrating when times are really good, but you have perspective too. And so, the average thing that happens on a daily basis doesn't necessarily faze me one way or the other. You kind of begin to categorize these things on a Richter scale, if you will, in terms of intensity. And most things that probably I would have thought were huge deals, 2 to 3 years ago, today wouldn't be as big of a deal. But absolutely, I mean, I have an emotional response to success and to failure today.
Okay. So speaking about the impact that these highs and lows and these moments through entrepreneurship have on you personally, I kind of want to lead this in towards your expanded personal life. So tell us a little bit about your family. And eventually, I want to talk about how the experience of entrepreneurship played in terms of affecting your life with your family. But before all of that, tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I've been married for the past it'll be 4 years in August, but I've been with my wife for well over a decade. In fact, I think we met 12 or 13 years ago, so long before I founded Caylent. And then in September of 2021, we welcomed our daughter Morgan, who is now almost 2 years old. She's going to be two in just a couple of months. And then some exciting news: my wife is pregnant with our second, which is going to be a boy, and he's also going to be due in September.
That's
Hopefully,
exciting.
yeah, thank you. So growing family, we're going to be going from zone coverage to man-to-man coverage here pretty soon, to use a sports analogy. But yeah, it's been really interesting juggling the responsibilities of being a parent with running a company. And I think that any parent, it doesn't actually matter what you're doing, whether you're in accounting or you're a lawyer or, you're running a business. I think, I mean, shout out to all the parents, kudos to everybody, especially the moms. I see what my wife does and the way that she works, every single day. So I see the way that she juggles being a full-time mom with, holding down a full-time job, and it's remarkable.
No, I think for a lot of people, when we think about the concept of entrepreneurship, and when you think about the concept of having a family and raising kids, for a lot of people, the big draw towards jobs and the big draw towards employment is that stability aspect to it, where they don't have to worry about financial security so that they can take care of their kids. But it's interesting hearing you say that like there's parallels between this as well as many other types of professions in terms of the stress you have and the experiences you have. So how would you say, do you feel that there is a difference between how your life has gone versus how it would have been if you hadn't been an entrepreneur?
Oh yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I think so many different things would be different. What I would say is that there is a particular stress to running a company or to founding a company. I think, especially if you have a family and especially if you have young kids, it really, all of a sudden you go from being responsible for yourself and maybe one other person to being responsible for young children. And so I would actually recommend it to people. I mean, I think we delayed our decision in having our first child, because we were worried about the impact that it would have on our work. But I think looking back, we probably should have gotten started building a family a little bit earlier. But then we wouldn't have our daughter, so tough to have regrets in life. But my advice would be for anybody that feels like their career has to come first, or they have to achieve certain milestones before they start a family. I would just challenge that thinking and say that looking back, that would not be my experience.
Interesting. Would you say there are any parallels between growing a company and raising a family?
Not so much in my experience. I think it's very different. I think certainly being organized is helpful when you have kids and they have schedules and things like that. Maintaining a good calendar is really important. But I'm struggling to think about major other parallels between entrepreneurship and raising a young kid.
So I think we're at this point, I want to ask you, what does your personal future look like? I'd like to pause here momentarily. Since we recorded this episode, there have been some important developments. JP has stepped down from his role as Caylent's CEO and passed the torch to Lori Williams, a technology leader with a strong track record of building and leading innovative services organizations, who will drive the vision for Caylent's next stage of growth. JP will transition to an advisory role on Caylent's board. In the next phase of this conversation, we will talk to JP about this decision and his road ahead. JP, welcome back. So since we last had you on this conversation, there's been a huge development. So for the audience listening in here, JP is now passing the torch of the CEO to Lori Williams. I'm so excited for what's to come, but I just want to say Thank you so much for everything you've done, JP. You're a truly inspiring leader. You've built a community for all of us Kalians to call home. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to really miss our town halls. I'm going to miss you leading those. I'm going to miss you answering the tough questions that come at the end of those. So it's truly like an emotional moment for me because I've seen this company grow from like 50 people to where we're at today, at all under your leadership. So just want to say thank you very much.
Well, thank you for saying that, Aman. I mean, it's been the honor of a lifetime, seriously, to lead this team and watch it grow and watch people like yourself, have their careers flourish here at Caylent. And I am stepping back from the CEO day-to-day duties here at Caylent, as I announced. We did a press release recently announcing Lori's appointment as CEO. I'm really excited. I've had an opportunity to get to know Lori. And of course, now that she's officially here at Caylent, more people have had a chance to meet her. And I've just been so impressed with her. In particular, I think for me, the way that she really resonates, the Caylent culture, I think really stands out. And I think with her background in cloud services and, the different ecosystems that she's been a part of, I'm really excited to see what her leadership is going to mean for the business, taking Caylent forward to the next leg of growth, the next journey. And as for myself, as you know, I'm going to be transitioning into an advisory role and staying involved in the board of directors. So I'm looking forward to continuing to play a part, even if it's a small part going forward. And watching Caylent continue to flourish and grow going forward. But this has just been a huge honor for me and really a highlight of my career.
That's amazing. For the viewers listening in, this is a good thing for us because JP is going to be joining us on more of these videos and podcasts in the future. So I'm looking forward to working with you more now, JP, now that your workload is not as hectic as it used to be. I wanted to pick back up on the question I asked before we ended our last recording. And it was around what your future looks like. And you've mentioned that like you're going to be at Caylent still in an advisory capacity, you're going to be part of our board and your impact's going to continue. But tell me about what your personal life now is going to look like. What are you excited to go ahead and do? And are there things you were waiting for that you wanted to do because you didn't have the time back as CEO and now you want to go and...
I've got a very long to-do list, a very long backlog that doesn't get any shorter. So I'm looking forward to doing those things. But in all seriousness, my wife and I are expecting our second child. My wife is over 8 months pregnant now, so the baby could come at any time. Her official due date is September 10th. So we've already got a 2-year-old daughter. So I'm really looking forward to spending a bit more time with family and, taking a little bit of a break here, but obviously staying active in Caylent going forward. But the timing is really good. And, I think that was a big consideration in terms of making this move at this particular time.
That totally makes sense. I wish you the best with welcoming your daughter into this world. Have you thought of a name?
It's a boy, actually. We already have a 2-year-old daughter, but so my wife's pregnant with a boy. We don't have a name. We have a short list. It's funny. Everybody asks that question, but I'm sure we'll arrive at a name here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to have to. So
fair enough. So in your new capacity as an advisor, what are some of the things you're looking to impact at Caylent? What are some of the immediate things you're going to be working on?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's about supporting Lori and the management team as we, as she onboards and, we continue the transition here. I think, she really wants to take the next, 30, 60, 90 days to really sort of do a listening tour. And, as she said, in her own words, listen more than she talks. And, I'm trying to work with her, to make sure that she has all the context and history and, just really has the best information possible as she navigates the future and makes big strategic decisions for the company. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to continue to take its course. And then I think, we have a lot of opportunity going forward. So I don't know exactly what the future holds for Caylent, but I know that it's going to be exciting and it's going to entail a lot more growth. And so I'm looking forward to spending time, with the board and with the management team on focusing on some strategic areas and lending my support and seeing where I can help.
Awesome. Well, we've got a pretty great picture of what's to come. Exciting things are brewing at Caylent, and I'm sure Kaylians are all extremely excited and maybe a little bit intrigued by what's to come too, because for a lot of us, we've had some level of, I guess, in the chaos, you might call it composure, with how much. So seeing new leadership come in, it's an exciting and uncertain moment, but like exciting because of the growth we've seen, and with the new people coming in, we've seen this consistency in our leadership and in our culture, and I'm really excited for what's to come with Laurie leading us into a new future. Hopefully, Caylent's at 1,000 in a few years from now. So once again, I just want to say thank you so much, JP, for everything you've done. None of us would be here if it wasn't for you putting in the effort, putting in the hours, and making sure that Caylent grew. And it wasn't a dying dream in the beginning. I remember in our conversation, you mentioned how much, like how long it took before things started to pick up. And once they picked up, then the amount of change that happened, the adaptiveness you'd needed at those points. And I imagine a lot of those roller coasters are coming up ahead as we grow further as well. So just want to just say thank you. I can't thank you enough, to be honest. It's the best job I've ever had. I can say that with confidence. And yeah, I look forward to working more with you.
Likewise, Aman. Well, thank you for the kind words. And I would just wrap things up by saying what you just said in terms of, the best job. I mean, that's one of our missions and goals here at Caylent, right? That's what it's all about at the end of the day. So it's enjoying what you're doing and the people that you're working with, and reaching towards, a common goal. So thank you for all that you do, for hosting these episodes and doing so many more things in the background, and to Cynthia and Connie and Kelsey and Belle and the rest of the team as well. So thank you, everybody. And yeah, looking forward to, this won't be the last that anybody hears from me. So looking forward to doing more of these things.
Awesome. Thanks, JP.
Thank you, everybody.
That concludes this episode of Cosmic Conversations. We hope you enjoyed learning about JP and found it enlightening and inspiring. I know I certainly did. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a review on the platform you're listening on. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at podcasts@caylent.com, and you can find this email address in the description below. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.